It's time to leave your cinematic troubles behind. Let the takes flow through you. And let the noise from the zeitgeist subside. Welcome to Cast Against Time.
Welcome!
I harmonized pretty well.
You did it.
Oh no, the reverb.
Yeah. Oh, I've still got my megaphone on.
We're doing great. We're starting off great.
You know, you shouldn't. Oh, Jesus Christ! We shouldn't be allowed to have all these toys.
We're really good at it.
We haven't experimented with any of this. Yeah, why become proficient at the thing that you do on a regular basis?
Yeah, we're human.
That's the American way, frankly.
Yeah.
And it's important to preserve our American values by hook or by crook, whether it be from orange guys in suits or super advanced AIs. You know, super mega advanced Russian AIs.
Where did hook and crook or crook come from?
That's a good question. I don't know the etymology of that. If I had to guess, I would say it has something to do with getting swindled.
But the hook and the crook there has to be a reason. I'm going to look it up.
It probably comes from the same dumb school of phrases as pull yourself up by your bootstraps.
Which that doesn't really make sense either.
You know, my AI segue just sailed right over your head. Like I just teed you up perfectly. And I teed you up twice.
Well, do a soft toss to yourself. You're doing soft toss.
I'll try to tee you up one more time. I'll try to tee you up. So I already teed you up with protecting America. Then I tried to tee you up with AI, Russian AI. Yes. So now, you know, maybe the only thing that can save us from all of these perils are a bold, Botoxed, short, beautiful movie savior.
Running movie savior?
Yes.
Biplane jumping movie saver?
Biplane straddling, for sure. I don't know if he's jumping a lot in there. But
he does one jump, one epic.
He does. There's a lot of biplane hijinks.
Mission Impossible.
Yeah, so you mentioned off mic that you wanted to discuss it, but we've become that quintessential podcast prototype where we can't talk to each other about things that happen in our real life anymore because we have to save it for the show.
Yes,
we've become.
We just don't talk off mic.
Well, I'm not suggesting that, but we've become have you really never like listened to a podcast and heard the hosts go like, "Oh, you know, I wanted to talk to you about this thing. I wanted to save it for the show."
No, but I literally did that like 15 minutes ago.
Well, I've heard that before. I'm saying we're not breaking any new ground. Actually, we are breaking new ground because we're the only show that does.
Yes. Well, I wanted to save it because I know you just get so giddy over these movies.
I've never hidden my love for.
No, I'm not. That's what I'm saying. I'm not saying you're hiding it. Your nips get super hard for these movies.
My nips and other things.
Oh no.
I mean, I will admit that they have their low points and they have their weak points and their strong points.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, I'm pro Mission Impossible.
So what do you think of this one? Let's just get straight to it.
Well, actually, so I saw this in a very interesting setting. Have you ever heard of something called Screen X?
Is it 4DX?
No. 4DX is where you take a little ride in a moving chair.
Yes. What's Screen X?
So Screen X is a thing I had never heard of, and now I don't know how I feel about it, but I don't know how I feel about it. You tell me how you feel about this.
Okay.
You go into essentially like an IMAX-sized screen, okay, but also alongside the walls.
Oh,
so to
yes.
the left of you and to the right of you, there's also projection going on.
I have seen this.
Have you seen it in person?
No. I've seen it on social media.
So they're trying to do this wraparound thing, and it's interesting. I did not hate it, but I don't know if I loved it either.
Could you see the point of it? Like, was there a reason for it?
Well, it's supposed to make it more immersive, and I will say that I prefer that to a 4DX.
Yes.
I don't need to be moving around at all, especially for a 2.5 hour plus movie.
Yeah.
Don't need that. So
do you feel like you missed some of the frame because you were kind of like looking to the left or right?
No, but what I will say is that I did, because look, they obviously have to modify or add things to the frame to achieve it. Either that or they're maybe stretching.
I feel like they're just stretching it.
Yeah, but I don't think so, because I get the sense that they're preserving the original aspect ratio. It's almost like adding 3D to a thing. It's like they had to add additional material, or, sometimes you would see a kind of a character getting stretched off the side of the screen. So clearly there are moments that they had to actually kind of just stretch the image, and it's not on the whole time. Kind of like IMAX. It's not always, well, unless something is shot purely in IMAX, which is pretty rare. Usually usually it kind of jumps between aspect ratios. I don't know. Occasionally I was taken out of the movie because I wanted to look at the thing that was surrounding the frame. And I would think to myself, like, why did they do that here? How is it enhancing the moment? Things like that. But it wasn't enough of a detraction to hate it.
Would you do it again?
Yeah, I think I would do it again just to see if obviously I probably wouldn't do it for like whatever the next A24 cancer drama is or but I would do it. I would do it for another kind of blockbustery thing that I am interested in.
Like F1. F1's coming out.
Yeah, that would be a good one to do it for, actually, because if they can find good ancillary stuff to just kind of throw out, because it's not like they're putting important information in your peripheral. They're just kind of matching colors and like kind of the scenery a little bit. So it's interesting. But back to MI Finals.
MI 8?
Yeah, I guess. MI 8, The Last Supper. What was it called?
The Final Reckoning?
The remastering? The Final Reckoning, yes.
Yeah.
I don't know how I feel about it because I don't know if it's the last one.
I feel like it has to be. Well, but I do know what you're saying. There's a possibility that it's not, but everything else leads you to believe that it is.
Do you know what I'm talking about when I reference a recap episode?
Yeah.
So like you watch, you're more of a sitcom watcher than I have ever been. But I've occasionally dabbled, and a recap episode is like an episode where, I don't know, it's like, let's say in the office, Jim leaves a trail of diarrhea down the hallway, and they have to close the office down, and then they tell stories about old things that happen in the office, and then they cut back to old episodes.
Well, it's like when sitcoms would do like a 100th episode, and they'd be like, here's all the wacky stuff that we got into, and try to fit it into the storyline. I think I know where you're going at, and this is what the first third of the movie to me was.
Definitely the first 20 minutes are an extreme recap episode.
It was just not needed.
Well, okay, at first it was a little cloying, but if this is the last film in the series, I'm actually okay with it. I was more taken aback, or in terms of things that I thought were superfluous, I just didn't need. I think you could have easily trimmed 20 minutes by cutting every instance of this. Everybody in the world is going to die
because of you.
If Ethan Hunt doesn't figure out how to save America.
Well, and also, Ethan, everything you've done has led to this. Like, there was 15 times
there
that
was
somebody
a lot.
did that.
There's just a lot of navel gazing and a lot of like, every choice that you make is so important, and everyone you love may die, but don't worry, because you are movie Jesus, and you are the most important man. And it's like, and it's not just the things they're saying, because it's not like it was a bit more ham-fisted than usual in terms of Mission Impossible movies. But I can get along with, like, if they were just like, hey man, you're action Jesus, save us, then I'd be like, okay, cool. But like, it's the cadence of what they do. It's like Angela Bass is like, Ethan Hunt is the only man that can save America.
Then Ving Rhames is doing it.
I believe in him, and he believes in us. And also, Ving Rhames. And that really matters.
Ving Rhames was surprisingly the best part of the movie.
We'll bleep that.
Yeah, I was going to say, you just ruined it.
Yeah, we'll bleep that.
Yeah, I mean,
so I just think, but again, it's like, I'm okay with the ham-fistedness of it all.
If it's the last movie.
Not only that, but also if they could have just like sped the cadence up a little bit.
But that brings a good point. If they're doing all of that and then they're like, psych, we're going to do another one.
Yeah, if they turn, and here's the thing, like if they do another one, it has to be the most ridiculous stunt brigade, you know.
I just don't know what they can come. I mean, obviously, there's
that
a
will
way
be that will
that
have to be
back.
the one where, and the joke's been made by 1 billion people, but that will have to be the one where he actually goes to space.
I was going to say this. Well, he's doing that in the next Doug Liman movie. He's going to space.
Oh, okay. Well, he's already been to space, I guess, technically in the Maverick.
Also, the dude is 64 years old. Like, how long can he keep doing these things?
He's going to let us know. That all sounds like criticism. I don't know. I dug it, man. I mean,
I liked it.
I eat this shit up. Yeah, I think that it's a weaker entry. I'm not going to bother to rank them. We've done that in the past. It's weaker material and a pretty stellar franchise, and it's still...
There's 2 action scenes that make it worth seeing in theater.
I'd say there's more than 2, but there's 2 that are pretty...
Standout.
That are not only standout, but are maybe amongst the best ever done in the series. And
yeah, I think we can both agree the submarine scene was top notch.
I think Biplane actually tops it a little bit for me, if only because of how it concludes, and I won't spoil anything beyond that. But yeah, the submarine thing, especially just learning how much serious danger everyone was in trying to do that shit. Mm-hmm. And hey, I applaud his commitment to...
Can I say this? And this is not uncommon in action movies, and I get what they're doing with it, but does it ever take you out when, like, so the submarine scene, and this is not a spoiler at all,
sure,
but they're like, you have 10, they're giving them a timeline. You have 15 minutes to get to the location. You have 10 minutes to execute the
well, that's and
action.
Mission Impossible has been that throughout its entire
and then
run.
You have 10 minutes to get out, or you're going to die and blah, blah, all this stuff. But then the submarine scene itself is a 20-minute long scene.
Okay.
And so, and they do this towards the end too, where it's like 4 minutes, Ethan, and then the scene takes 15 minutes.
You know what? Actually, usually I'm sensitive to that, but this time I was actually like doing the 5.
No, you weren't. You fucking
liar. Oh yeah. And this time was actually pretty on point.
The submarine one is definitely not.
Well, the submarine
not 10
doesn't.
Minutes.
So there's a submarine sequence in the film, and we're not going to spoil what happens in it. But there are stakes in it. Like he does have a time frame to get things done, but it's not a ticking clock. It's a thing that's happening to the environment around him. So that's actually was kind of refreshing, because the movie is filled with like countdown timers. There's probably like 10 sequences where there's like some countdown timer that needs to be thwarted.
Yeah.
And the only kind of countdown timer in this was like the environment around him.
But you're telling me, so with the biplane one, you're telling me that when she says 4 minutes, or whoever says 4 minutes, you literally counted down 4 minutes from then.
No. I wasn't counting minutes, but like when they would, so sometimes they'll say 10 seconds, man. And then like, you know,
well, yeah, that.
And then they'll stretch that 10 seconds into 30 seconds. But this entree into the series actually was pretty good about being like, hey, you got this will self-destruct in 5 seconds. 5 seconds later.
And so when I say that, I understand that it's a movie and things happen and whatnot. And I'm very thankful they stretched those scenes. But are there any times where that does kind of piss you off or take you out of it?
It grates on me if the stakes are low, or if the stakes aren't worthy of a countdown.
Or I think if there is an actual like number countdown, if you can see the timer and they're referencing it throughout, and then they extend it towards the end, that I mean,
I don't need that. Here's what it comes down to. If I'm constantly thinking of the timer and nothing else, I don't know if that means that the film has lost me or not. Because like if I'm just going like, well, they got 4 minutes, they said I have 4 minutes, this was 10 minutes ago. Then I'm probably not particularly engaged by the stuff that's happening up on screen. So if they say like, you know, you have 4 minutes, Ethan, and then 20 minutes later, they're like, you got 2 minutes. And I don't notice that, that's probably good. That's probably a good thing.
Yeah.
And that was the case for most of the sequences in this. But I will say that by the time, you know, and I'm not going to just spoil like what the context is, but by the time like the 7th or 8th countdown timer came around, that actually took me out of the movie. Not the circumstances, but just like they keep like revealing these weapons or these bombs or these
or even the next thing, the next step in their plan had timers to it. It's like, we have to do this exactly when this happens and that happens. And you're right, thinking about it, there was maybe, I mean, there was a timer probably every 20 minutes.
And I actually, honestly, it's so egregious that part of me wonders if there isn't some kind of subtext wrapped into that. Because the thing is, like, and we've talked about this off mic. Was it you and I that were talking about Bond? No, I was talking to somebody else about Bond, but about the difference between Bond and Mission Impossible. And the thing is, like, Mission Impossible has always had a way to be about something, even if it doesn't end up doing that particularly well, you know. And it's not like I expect Mission Impossible to be like a message movie, but it's able to do that, and that's part of what makes it, to me, like a better series if we were to compare the two, even though one has legacy and the other doesn't. Although I guess now, Mission 1 was 96?
Well, I mean, there's more emotional heft to the Mission Impossible movies.
Well, so yes, there's more emotional heft, but there's also way more opportunity for there to be deeper meaning in those movies. And again, if you want to extract meaningful subtext from the thing you're enjoying, just go read a book probably. But that being said, there's more room for these movies to be about something. Mm-hmm. And that in and of itself kind of makes them better. And part of the thing that kind of kept me from connecting as well as I could have with the last entry is I was struggling to think, like, what is this movie about?
About staying off the internet.
I guess.
I half joke because he literally says that to one person that he's about to perish.
No.
I think the thing with Mission Impossible that James Bond doesn't have is that you have a lot of continuous characters on a team, and a lot of the through line is this emotional human level on his team and the friendships and all that.
Yeah, and that there will be no Mission Impossible when Thomas Cruise crashes into the moon or whatever.
Yeah. He's going to die in the most like boring way possible.
He's going to have a stroke when he's 98.
He's going to like bite into something he's allergic to and not have an EpiPen.
No, that guy will die trying to entertain us. And, you know, I don't know if he's a good guy. I hope that he is. You know, there's a part of me that wants to be like, they just like put special blinders over his eyes and they've Manchurian candidated out the name Shelley Miscavige from his vocabulary or whatever. You know, like I want to believe that he's actually a good guy and that he's just wants like the movies to be beautiful and wants every screening of every movie to be packed. And I'd like to believe he's a good guy, but if he's not, him atoning for his sins by dying in an effort to entertain us would make up for a lot of it. So anyway.
I agree. Well, before we end this, let me just ask you bluntly: do you think they make another one?
God, it's hard to say. You know, I feel like he's trying to branch out.
Branch out. He's made 100 films.
I would be surprised if I wouldn't put it past them.
The only reason I think he might is because it makes so much fucking money.
Well, and I don't know. They're
actually underperforming this time.
I'll tell you this: if they do make another one, it'll be like a decade from now. He will be in his 70s and he will still be doing crazy shit, and I will be there on opening weekend. But we risk this becoming a Mission Impossible show. What show?
You might ask.
And I might answer, Cast Against Time. Yes.
Control yourself. Like that scene in Sinners, where it's just overtaking you. The spirits of past podcasters and future podcasters are taking over you.
There's Chinese podcaster versions of me dancing around behind me. What show? A show where we examine the pathology of the mob as it pertains to the world of cinema, where we look across the filmic discourse and attempt to restore some sanity. We do this in one of two ways. One, by unpacking the ideas and assertions we stumble across out there in the media, be it social or otherwise, and by occasionally subjecting ourselves to mysterious media oddities. And two, there you go, by spinning the reel of scopophilia, where we let fate decide on a series of film-related exercises that are in no way a meaningless or desperate grab for content. We're going to do that today. So let's start with our first segment where we confront the media. Let's confront that.
Hello, media.
Hello.
Oh, no.
You discovered a proposition that the Hollywood Reporter put forward,
mm-hmm.
and it comes in the form of an article. Well, we'll sum it up in our own words in a second, but the headline of the article is, "Are music and other celebrity films killing?"
Killing.
The documentary. Platforms are doubling down on authorized celebrity content, leading documentarians to question what the future of the doc looks like. So the meat of this article is proposing, well, it's looking at a few things. It's looking at the Emmy award season, and it's looking at some of the top contenders that are basically going to be sweeping the category this year. And a large majority of it, in fact, I wouldn't be surprised if all of it, I actually haven't seen the list of Emmy nominees because I don't care. I don't give a shit. I don't give a shit about the Oscars. I don't give a shit about the Golden Globes. I definitely don't give a shit about the Emmys. But people do. I know people that have them, and they're very proud of them. So I'm not going to naysay just because that's my nature. But, I guess an important distinction to make here is that because it's the Emmys, these are features, right? Mm-hmm. They are movies. They're documentary features, but they are programmed for television. And I guess that's the thing that, maybe that's the thing that this article should be more upfront about. They never reference the fact that a lot of the things they're complaining about here are things that are produced and that are meant to be direct to streaming. Mm-hmm. In fact, they are referencing documentaries from Bruce Springsteen, Celine Dion, John Williams, and the Beatles. Did any of those get theatrical release?
No.
Okay.
Not that I can think of.
So I do think that matters. And by the way, the documentary space has been largely inhabited by direct-to-streaming content mm-hmm. for a while. And something that it would have been interesting for me to do some research on, which I will never do because we are flying by the seat of our pants here. But something that would have been interesting to research would be that whether any of these films would be eligible for an Academy Award. I don't think so because I believe you have to have a theatrical release.
No, because Get Back won. No, I think some of these examples, because I looked last night about what won Oscars and all that. I'm pretty sure. I'll look it up while you continue.
I know that neither of the films that they're referencing here were nominated this year, and some of them were eligible, but all of these...
Summer of Soul won, and that's one that's referenced.
This article is basically proposing that the documentary industrial complex that is linked to streaming, and the streaming services rely on documentary content when they have a dearth of actual scripted releases to put out. And this article is proclaiming that it has become an easy fallback to not only produce these films, but also that these films are pretty shallow because they're essentially just puff pieces for
to bring viewers in.
But also
and puff pieces for the artists that are producing them.
They're self-serving, highly produced by the artist or by the people that owns the catalog.
And so there's that front, and I think it's also trying to say that a lot of the people that make the documentaries that want to say serious things about it, like in the past, streamers don't want that because it doesn't put people in seats to watch their streaming platform.
But more crucially, artists don't want it.
And not only that. They're not going to get the funding. It brings up some examples of documentaries that were going to be made about Trump or some other subject.
So here's one, and I'll read this. They were going to do one about Prince, and here's a section that was pretty revelatory to me about a documentary that, having now learned about it, I would love to see. So. This is what they have to say about that. The crisis came to the fore in the fall with the revelation that Ezra Edelman, the creative force behind Emmy-winning 2016 docuseries O.J. Made in America, had directed a similarly ambitious piece for Netflix about the beautiful genius and alleged malevolent manipulations and worse of Prince. But with both the lawyers and rights management company Primary Wave that were in charge of the musician's estate worried about the effects of Prince's catalog sales, at least some among the estate's overseers reportedly threatened to use a clause in the contract that would require the 9-hour film to be cut down to 6. The move led to the completed piece being permanently shelved. A new, more burnished authorized movie, not directed by Edelman, will now rise in its place. Now, I think we would, before we go too much further, we would be remiss if we did not link this to the phenomenon of musical biopics in the scripted space. Because to me, I don't see much of a difference between what's happening there and what is happening here.
Well, take Bohemian Rhapsody. That's a perfect example.
Yeah. Take virtually any musical biopic where you have license to the actual music.
Well, I don't, and this is a side note, and we can go right back to it, but I don't think it's restricted to this. I think it's a celebrity documentary, because this happens in sports all the time too. But,
yes. Although with sports, it's more difficult. So you can still make a Michael Jordan documentary with tons and tons of archival material that MJ has no purchase on. So Michael Jordan doesn't own every picture and piece of video and piece of media that was taken of him or about him or around him. Whereas with a lot of these artists, most of the media that you're interested in is the actual music. And there's always going to be an artist in charge of that stuff, or at least an estate if they're dead, which in many cases they are. And so basically this article is just lamenting that there's just too much of this, and that it's kind of flooding the market essentially. And that the paradigm shift of being able to tell a truthful story about a musical artist is virtually impossible if you are doing it with the full cooperation of that artist, because they're going to produce the hell out of it, and it's not going to be warts and all. And that's the thing that we have said about the biopic problem. And I've made it very clear that the musical biopic is my very least favorite genre of scripted features or material of any kind, because of that exact problem. But interestingly, with this,
I was going to say, documentaries, do you feel the same?
No, I don't. Because with documentaries, especially about music, if I know that the artist was fully involved, I kind of just feel like you have to be savvy enough at this point to know that you're not going to get the full story. I'm not going to say a true story. This article, for example, references the John Williams documentary that came out maybe roughly a year now by Disney. And of course, Disney produces and owns most of the Star Wars stuff. It's very closely tied to John Williams. I'm pretty sure that Indiana Jones things are pretty much solely owned by Disney at this point, or at least all Lucasfilm material is going to be streamed and distributed by Disney from now on. So, and a lot of that ties back to John Williams. And so that is part of what this article is lamenting or trying to call attention to as well, is that, there are a lot of these kind of sort of prestige projects that are coming out, but they're coming out from companies that own the catalog. So
there's
recently,
this integration into a documentary that feeds back into the product they own.
Yes. And in a way, for example, they talk about how Bob Dylan recently sold his catalog to somebody, Universal maybe.
Yeah.
And then Bruce Springsteen sold his catalog to Sony. And Dylan already has about 50 to 100 documentaries that are authorized about him, not excluding a very important one, Don't Look Back, which is maybe one of the most important music documentaries of all time, regardless of how you feel about Dylan. So it's not as if the guy hasn't had his documentary exposure in the past. But, I could see a big cynical Peacock Bob Dylan documentary, 12 episodes, like the definitive Bob Dylan experience, only on Peacock. And it won't be the definitive experience. Same with the Bruce Springsteen doc, which I haven't seen. I don't know. I mean, I guess I'd put that question to you. I feel like I am savvy enough to know that these things aren't going to be definitive. And so just taking the John Williams one as an example, I watched that knowing full well that it was going to be a Disney product, a Disney-fied product. It was going to be neutered for families. It was going to be safe. And that whatever skeletons John Williams may or may not have in his closet, we weren't going to hear about them in that documentary. But I was happy to watch it because I also went, well, this is just going to be a trip down memory lane for the music.
Yeah.
And I was fine with that. But if I were going into it with the mindset that I'm going to learn everything, or at least all of the important things about this artist, then I'm in trouble. I don't know how you feel about it.
Well, no, I feel the same way about the Beatles ones, and I'm a big Beatles fan, and we
finally found one.
It would be very naive to think that Paul McCartney, and maybe to a lesser degree if Ringo Starr, didn't have some input on specifically
right
the Scorsese one that he produced just came out, the 64 one, and Get Back as well. But to your point, knowing that they probably had a hand in it, and McCartney probably got Final Cut or had notes or whatever, it didn't deter me from enjoying the experience and learning something new and a different perspective about the artist. However, I think there's a good example of the counter of what this is trying to say. And it's a documentary that we both enjoyed recently, which was the Paul Rubens one, who's
not a musical artist, but we'll allow it.
But it's still kind of the same. It's kind of a parallel track where he was involved in the interviews, but he didn't have control over the story, is what they lead you to believe. And I think we both agreed that was a pretty good documentary, and we learned something about his life that we probably didn't know, and we got to look behind the curtains, but he still was involved in a certain way.
Well, yeah, I mean, I even with that, I don't get the sense that we've learned everything about Paul Rubens, but it feels more honest because he states pretty openly that he just wanted to leave us all with some parting words before he dies. That's essentially the framing device for that documentary. None of these, particularly in this article, they're referencing a Bruce Springsteen doc, which I haven't seen, a Celine Dion doc, which I haven't seen, a John Williams doc, which I have seen, and a Beatles doc that I have seen. So maybe in the case of Celine Dion, I know that she's got some issues with her big French pipes. I don't know. Maybe she's doing something similar there. Maybe she gets on screen in the first 5 minutes and goes,
"Oh no."
Hello, it is me, Celine. I am no longer able to deliver you the beautiful French pop.
Did you try to sing right now?
No. Hang on. I got to get my band going. I actually don't know any of her songs. Oh, wait.
What do you mean you don't know any of her songs? It's you. Don't sing longer than 30 seconds. We can't pay for this. Oh, no, she died.
Oh, she's gone. She's gone. But maybe that's what she does. Maybe she gets on the opening segment. She gets up there and goes, my French pipes are damaged, and I will do a tell all about me. And maybe doesn't actually. Maybe she does. Maybe she gets the warts and all.
Is it a coincidence or not a coincidence that the documentaries about people seem to be better and more cutthroat and more about the truth when they are dying or they have already died?
Well, that's a great question. It's easier to be honest about somebody when they're dead because they're not going to be able to stand over your shoulder, especially if their state has producing power over what you're making. I also think we're bearing the lead here a little bit. I do want to make it clear that what this article is lamenting is that they feel like the documentary space is being saturated by dishonest or at least highly, highly produced and inaccurate puff pieces for celebrities that will never have the chance to tell the full story. And the thing is, I kind of agree with that, but for some reason, and again, I think it's part and parcel to what we've been talking about and complaining about with the biopic thing. For some reason, it hits different with me because I guess I just know that no documentary is A, going to get the full picture.
No.
But B, if it's coming from the source, if it's coming from the horse's mouth, of course it's not going to be honest.
Well, you're also telling a story about we're all flawed. You're telling a story about a flawed human, and if you include that human in it, and you're telling that story, it's going to be, like you said, the shades are going to be gray. It's not going to be black or white. And there's going to be some open to interpretation about any documentary about a subject.
If I'm watching The Last Dance, I would be very naive to go like, that's all there is to say about MJ. That's it. That's it right there.
But that's kind of what a good documentary does. If it does its job, it
lets your guard down.
Well, it lets your guard down, but you also leave it being like, okay, I learned something more about that person, but I still don't know them entirely.
Right. Well, and that's the thing, though. I don't know if it's possible, unless you've got a really honest person like Paul Rubens. I don't know if it's possible to have that honest discourse coming from the source. Like, I almost feel like MJ will have to be dead 30 years, and then I don't want to say Ken Burns type because he's too overly cited, but an Alex Gibney type or anybody like
Herzog
or anybody.
Michael Jordan. Michael Jordan play basketball.
Gambling is very akin to dunking. It is all an experiment. There are failures.
Oh no, I'm shot.
There are successes. I've been shot again. How do I continue to get shot by pellet guns? I must stop coming to LA.
But no, so anybody like an Alex Gibney or an Errol Morris or somebody like when MJ's 30 years dead or a Herzog, then like maybe, and even then it's not, there's no such thing as true objectivity. There's no such thing as reaching a pure truth. It's just like, you can read a 2,000 page biography of Charlemagne and you're going to miss a lot. So we can toss that aside. But in terms of what this article is concerned about, it almost feels like they're more concerned about the saturation of the medium than the fact that there is this kind of stuff out there. Because surely there have been tons of examples of self-serving musical docs that are shallow, that do very little other than like promote a person's brand forever. I'm thinking back like 10 years ago, there was like this thing where Jack White and The Edge and Jimmy Page got together. It was called this might be fucking loud, or it's too fucking loud, or
it's too fucking loud in here.
Yeah, it's really loud. What is it? This must be loud. It might get loud. It might get loud.
It might get loud.
Okay,
2008.
Okay, yeah. And I remember people being really excited about it because they're like, oh, they're going to talk about like the history of like leading guitarists and like all this. And it's really just like this self-serving thing where like these three guys get together and they kind of jerk off like about their own careers, and they kind of like look at some old guitars and go, this is cool. And then they do like one song together badly and then they fuck off. And but there's just been self-serving like stunty musical documentary stuff forever. It's just that now it's just like
it's accessible.
It's accessible and it's easy to like get eyeballs on it.
Well, and I think that's where you're going, and I agree, is that there's this part of this article that's like we're doomed, and it's like no. I guess
that's kind of what I want to answer.
There's a lot of this in streamers and front of mind because that's what the streamers want people to watch, and there's a ton of it, but I know we don't give a shit about awards, but if you look at what has been nominated or won the last 10 years, it's all serious topics and like well done documentaries. Well,
if you're
like
talking about the Oscars, I mean, they're specifically referencing the Emmys.
The Emmys too. It's not everything that's nominated or winning is not, at least in the past 10 years, 20 years, is not just music or celebrity or documentaries. I think there are serious subjects that still get made and serious documentaries that still get made.
But also,
and you just have to look for them past the streaming, what the streamers want you to watch, basically.
Agreed. And the other thing is like, again, an aim of this show, and we can't be too serious about it because we do it while drinking, is like, it'd be nice if people were more media literate. And the Hollywood Reporter is actually like a pretty decent rag, or at least like they usually try to put out some thoughtful shit. They get it wrong occasionally. I can appreciate what these people are trying to kind of the danger that this writer and the editor of the Hollywood Reporter is trying to flag here.
Because documentaries are a very finicky part of entertainment.
The thing is, I just think that like they're also not focusing on the stuff that is being done well. I mean, you just mentioned one that I think is incredible,
Summer of Soul,
which is Summer of Soul. Granted, that's like 3 years old now, but even like looking at things on just the streaming level, I mean, I can think of a ton just off the top of my brain that were really interesting, and not even interesting, like pushing the genre forward. So I thought that like, I don't know, Moon Age Daydream it was pretty genre bending and unique. Like I Call Him Morgan was a Netflix exclusive, never saw a theater. Fantastic. So, and those are recent. And there is also though,
like even the Get Back documentary is in itself a different take on a documentary and is worth a watch and doing something that you don't usually see. I haven't seen the Bee Gees one, but I heard that one's great.
Well, and by the way, we should also mention that just because an artist is involved doesn't mean that it has to be bad.
No.
Or even, maybe...
Unless it's Brian May, and then it's probably fucking awful.
Or Mike Love. And I should mention that it's crazy to me that we have like 30,000 Beatles docs, but we haven't had like one comprehensive Beach Boys doc yet.
Didn't Ron Howard just do one? Was Mike Love involved in that?
I'm not. Are you going to... Beyonce did like her Homecoming documentary. I'm not even like a Beyonce guy.
You're not?
She, I mean, I'm more of a Benoist fan. But she directed it herself, and it feels like it's pretty revelatory for what it is, and by all accounts it's pretty good. So I don't know,
stop making sense.
I think there's a ton of examples we could mention. I just think that the Hollywood Reporter, especially these days, and it's right in the title of the magazine, they're a bit doom and gloom these days, and I understand it. I understand it, and I'm with you. I'm with them. But I guess I would urge people to keep calm a little bit, because there's still a good stuff out there and opportunities for good stuff. And by the way, just because something starts as a puff piece doesn't mean that it can't expand beyond those parameters. For example, a very highly touted documentary that's pretty recent was one called The Carter. And that's about
Lil Wayne.
It's about Lil Wayne. And apparently, he was involved halfway through, and then he realized that the filmmakers wanted to tell an honest story about him, and then he fucked off and actually sued them to try to keep it from coming out, and they won. And now it's out there, and apparently it's pretty good. I don't really have a firm enough attachment to his output to like really care enough.
Lil Wayne.
Whatever. There's like one or two.
Well, man,
there's one or two bops in there. Yeah, that's right. I said bop. But anyway, I mean, the other thing is like it's such a rich genre. It really is.
This just strikes me as whenever you turn your streamer on and you look at the top, whatever the streaming, you go to the documentary section and the top row is whatever. They're all going to be the celebrity ones they produce. And this article strikes me as this person saw that and was like, oh my God, we're screwed. And it's like, well, if you go one or two layers deeper, it's not all doom and gloom.
Sure. You also have to realize that trade rags like Hollywood Reporter and Vulture and Vanity Fair and Deadline are very hyper award season focused.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't care if like the Emmys only ever nominate, I don't know, like if like Hacks continues to win best comedy for the next 7 years, which it's almost certain to do.
I mean, it just got renewed.
Until it's done. Abbott Elementary will continue to like, and by the way, I'm not saying these are bad series. I'm just saying it's like the Emmys pick a horse, and then they very rarely stray from.
Well, it's like Modern Family won like 10 years in a row.
Yeah, or like Veep won 10 years in a row, or did Breaking Bad ever win? Actually, didn't Breaking Bad famously get?
Cranston won a few years in a row.
Anyway, so we just have to keep in mind that a lot of these trade rags are very interested in the award season stuff, and like they see this. I'm assuming the Emmy nominees have been announced. The Anemone nominations have been announced, right? They look at the nominations.
They have not been.
Okay, fine. So they look at the pool of potential nominees, and they see this sea of Bruce Springsteen, Celine Dion, John Williams, the Beatles. The market is saturated with this.
Well, and that's
this like artist-backed stuff.
So I had thought that they were released too, and this kind of makes me more upset with this article because it's just proclaiming what they think is going to happen this year, and it's like, well, like I said, if you look back at the last 5 to 10 years of nominations on the Emmys and Oscars, it's not celebrity-driven documentaries,
right?
It's stuff that's more serious, and so for them to kind of wave this flag of panic when what they consider is the pinnacle of entertainment, these awards, and they're not even reflecting what they're saying, it's kind of disingenuous in a way.
Right. I mean, and also, I think of like a movie like Soundtrack to a Coup d'etat, which is like an amazing music film, which like has it just could not be farther from any of the things they're decrying. Now, that was an actual film. I think it had a theatrical release. Although I'm pretty sure it got bought up by Amazon Prime pretty quickly. So I don't know. I mean, like, would that qualify for an Emmy? And if it did, why isn't that getting any love? Maybe, I'm sure it probably just doesn't qualify. And that's where the lines kind of blur here a little bit, because I'm sure many of these films were released at some kind of a film festival, right? Like I would be shocked if like Get Back wasn't premiered at a film festival. And so we're talking about a weird, blurry line anyway. So I don't know. To me, like the cure for the thing that this article is worried about, like the oversaturation of artist produced and nerfed documentaries that are flooding the documentary space, is A, widen your parameters, because there's good documentary stuff being made out there. And look, I get it. Like you fire up fucking the service formerly known as Max, and you see a ton of like true crime slop, and it's like. It's not even clear anymore that wasn't like written by an AI bot, and like, I don't know. To me, that's much more concerning than like these. Yeah,
I almost consider the true crime stuff its own category. Like,
but I mean, it's like some of it tries to be prestige. You could just as easily look across the landscape of current documentary trends and see that and be just as turned off by what's happening there as you are with this. At least with this stuff, you can look at it and go, it's a big polished audio or discography that you can choose if you're savvy enough viewer to watch and go like, I'm just going to take a trip down memory lane with old Celine Dion and her big unshaved discography of French, whatever. And they're like, that's great. As long as you aren't believing that there's no other, that these are the definitive things. There are good examples of this out there too. And it is a problem that like the Ezra Edelman Prince documentary that was going to be like actually honest is not going to see the light of day. Like that stuff sucks. Yeah. That's not great. And another thing that we haven't talked about, and we're not going to spend too much more time with this. It's like another thing that we haven't really touched on that this article brings up is that it's hard to make an honest documentary about an artist without them being super litigious. They mentioned like the Michael Jackson doc that was released like in 2016 where, tickling my never region or
leaving Neverland.
Abusing never regions. It's not meant to be. This is a safe space for victims of trauma. I just don't remember the name of the film. Okay.
Leaving Neverland.
But yeah, so like they bring that up and then they go like, well, you couldn't do that today. It's like, well, you probably could, and I don't think there's anybody in his estate that's like, well, maybe
gotta fight that.
I don't know. I mean, yeah, that has been tied up in litigation for a long time, so that's a bad example. But and that is a thing that the article is also decrying. It's like we can't tell an honest story about these people because while they're alive, they're just going to sue the pants off us. And it's like. Maybe that's
they
true.
mentioned Going Clear, and that won the award, and how that was more of a controversial thing too.
But when Going Clear came out, they had to like. I remember reading an article where they said they had to lawyer up with like a fucking massive team of lawyers, like, and maybe that's the thing. It's like if you want to do the big tell-all Billie Eilish documentary talking about her huge heroin problem and like or whatever scandal she has. I'm just making that up. I don't know whatever her scandal is. Or the time that she liquefied an Olympic-sized pool full of infants into a slurry that she and her brother could use to fuel their recording sessions for albums for generations to come. I don't know. Whatever the thing that she did that was I don't know anything about Billie Eilish.
Sounds like you know a lot.
Other than she did a mediocre Bond song. But
which she won the Oscar for.
Well, that should tell you more about the Oscars than about the song. But it would be hard to make that documentary now because she could probably get lawyer happy. Mm-hmm. But I don't think it's ever not been that way.
Yeah, I think that you just got to be aware of the space. And it's just like regular movies. Like there's slop and there's prestige. And like you just got to search through the weeds.
Maybe
a little bit.
the lesson should be, and the article actually kind of ends on this note, is like, well, so the article is actually talking to somebody who's producing this kind of stuff and says that just because these big companies don't want to go too deep into the water doesn't mean the docs are coming to an end. But my thing is like, maybe look to not the big companies to create this kind of stuff and maybe wait a while. Like don't do it while it's so close to the source. You know, I don't know. So I guess I would file this away as a kind of a case of minor fear-mongering on the part of Hollywood Reporter. I hate to say. It's a thoughtfully written article that is concerned about a real thing. I just don't think... honestly, you should be concerned that people will even be watching long-form content long enough for this to be an issue.
Yeah, true.
First, before this is ever really like a huge problem. And honestly, we're probably running out of musical catalogs to mine. Well, maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. I'm an old piece of shit. Has it not come through yet?
That's so unfair.
All right. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot we could say about this, but
I think it's misleading. I think it's just trying. I
just think it's just not worth. Not worth getting worked.
I think the intention is all right and is there, but it's a little bit overblown.
We ain't got time for that. We ain't got no time.
Ain't nobody got time for that.
We ain't not got time for that. Ain't nobody got time for that. See, we're doing old memes. This is entertaining for everyone.
Woo!
All right, let's move. It's time to spin that reel.
Spin it. I think I spun it last time. So.
Oh, you did.
This time it's you.
Why are you Humphrey Bogarting the wheel? All right, here we go.
Was that a baseball organ?
Yeah, I know it was more baseball than I expected to. So we have landed on mailbag. Well, that's nice. We haven't landed on mailbag before.
Mailbag. I feel like we might have.
Let's talk
we sound
about
like
our
fucking Blue's Clues show.
What does that mean?
Like mailman is here with the mail.
Yeah. Okay, well, so we have a handful of emails here, and this one's actually from Anonymous, which is disappointing because we can't give you any shout outs.
Come on, Anonymous.
But
do it in an anonymous voice.
Hi, I'm Anonymous. I don't know why okay, here we go. No, okay, hi.
You sound like you're nervously sweating.
I had to get there. Now I'm there. Hi, I'm Anonymous. I don't know I have a list, but just feel like I should have one. Okay, today I wanted to send you an article, and I just wanted to ask if this is a reasonable thing to complain about. This is a post that I found on bluesky.app, otherwise known as a skeet, that I discovered.
That's not what they call it.
No, it is actually. It is actually what they call it. Otherwise known as a skeet. And I wanted to challenge this claim.
So this is a post from a person that will go unnamed per our policy. But getting back to the question.
This person posts, watching another period piece in which the costumes all seem to be from within a year or two of the date of the story, as if nobody wears old clothes. Everything looks like it was just fabricated and then ironed. No tears, no stains, no dirt. This is creative malpractice. My question to you is this a reasonable thing to complain about where period films are concerned? Do you have any period film pet peeves?
And then that's it for Anonymous.
Thanks, Anonymous.
Wow. Well, it's an interesting question. Let's first address the post.
Mm-hmm.
This has landed on our Reddit. Wow, I just turned into a fucking...
Address the skeet?
I just turned into Elon Musk. Grimes, I found Blue Sky post. It's about me balls. So let's first address the skeet. I can't believe you didn't know it was the skeet.
No, I don't think that's true.
Look it up. Look it up right now.
You continue and I'll look it up.
So I'll read the post one more time. Watching another period piece in which the costumes all seem to be from within a year or two of the date of the story, as if nobody wears old clothes. Everything looks like it was just fabricated and then ironed. No tears, no stains, no dirt. This is creative malpractice. It has several hundred likes and a lot of people agreeing with the sentiment. And Anonymous wants to know if this is a reasonable thing to complain about. And then it, essentially extrapolating from their question, if it is or if it isn't, do we have any of our own? Well, in terms of what this person is saying, I'm just going to go ahead and throw it out there that no, this is pretty unreasonable.
Yes.
Does what this person is doing remind you of any other kind of poster, be it on this social media service or otherwise? And by the way, this is a film Twitter/film Blue Sky person who you probably will have heard on other podcasts if you listen to enough of these kind of things. I'll just come out and say it.
I was going to say, go for it.
What this person's doing reminds me of a lot of what Neil deGrasse Tyson does to movies.
Yeah, I would have never guessed. That's where you were going.
Because it's this nitpicky shit where it's nitpicky to a fault and to a degree that
you can find something out of every film to bring out.
Yeah.
It feels like this is what it's
doing.
You're
picking at the window dressing. You're picking at window dressing that isn't egregious. Mm-hmm. And the popular example with Neil deGrasse Tyson, for example. So he famously tweeted about how Titanic is a piece of shit because they didn't get like the constellation of the stars correct. And like the orientation of like the constellations and stuff was not where it should be.
And so the whole movie is just done.
And so the whole thing is crap. And he's known to do this. He's been like a huge movie buzzkill forever. That's just the only period piece example I can think of. He's normally doing this with sci-fi shit. It's like, so lightsabers wouldn't actually work that way. It's like, well,
lightsabers don't exist.
Like Neil, I wasn't laboring under the delusion that there was like a little green gremlin that could use the force that can flip around either,
that gets carried in a backpack.
But I'm still going to go and enjoy it. Don't take this from me. So this feels like just that level of nitpicky where it's almost like, look at me, look at this thing that I've picked up on about period films.
Like thumbing your nose at something that doesn't need it.
Because the thing is, there are egregious things that period films do. And so maybe like that's where we can start. why don't we just start by listing like a small handful of things that period films do that are worse? Could you do you have any examples?
I mean, to me, the lack of focus on correct accents.
That's a good one. So yeah, why is it that every single accent, and we kind of touched upon this in our Napoleon discussion last season, but yeah, why is that the go-to?
Why can Black Panther have all their actors do like a African Wakandan accent?
Well, exactly. Good point. Well, that gets into a whole other thing. So, I mean, a lot of this comes down to. So, I guess I would just throw it out there that I think intellectual laziness is like more egregious than actually like their clothes were perfectly ironed in one scene. Many examples of that. So you just kind of touched on it. Yeah. Why don't they just use the accent for the time? Well, let's say it's a period piece about something Roman. It's gladiator. Right? The accent would be Latin.
Yeah.
And I don't know if anybody knows what a Latin accent sounds like.
But what about Napoleon?
One of the things I actually kind of liked about Napoleon, which I believe is a flawed film, and we talked about this last season, I won't go too deep into it. It's like, I like that Joaquin Phoenix didn't do
I mean, you don't need to do a caricature of a French person, but you can have a French accent.
Yes, and I acknowledge that there are degrees of subtlety.
Can I ask why you liked it that he didn't do that?
Because I feel like we shouldn't be beholden to the standard that everything has to be period accurate to a fault. Which is
are there some films that an accent throws you off or does make you upset?
There are plenty of films where, so in that situation, I was wondering why everyone has an English accent. So I guess it would be more natural if everyone just was kind of doing their subtle attempt at a French accent. I just don't want it to be over the top. And the problem with a French accent is it's difficult for actors not to go over the top with it. Yeah, I don't know. So
either way, we digress.
But I'm just saying, but the accents question, as you alluded to, is probably a more worthy nitpick than like whether there's how many holes there are in the clothes. In fact,
and let's just get this out of the way. There are plenty of movies that have characters that have tattered or like worn out clothes and all that.
Well, that's the thing. I was actually going to say,
I don't know what this person's watching, but
another thing that is
watching Mad Men, and nobody has holds because they're all fucking rich ad people.
Yeah, so we don't know what this person was watching, but like I can assume it was period because they're saying the term period, and people don't really call things that are relatively recent history a period piece. So I'm assuming they're referring to ancient history or at least history beyond a few centuries. And the thing is, like, a category of egregious things would be things that are very far off base historically. I don't need you to be, there's so many dumb like BuzzFeed things which is like, so actually in Apollo 13 they had a Let It Be record, and actually that album came out like a month later, and so it's not accurate. And like that is just so unnecessary unless the movie is propping itself up as this absolutely purely accurate depiction of what went down. And maybe in that case it would be because Ron Howard has very little else in his tool bag. Otherwise, you can assume there's some kind of artistry to it. And it's okay if like a sword that some knight is holding is like maybe, I don't know, a year earlier than they would have had one, right?
Or like Tarantino had characters in the 1800s wearing sunglasses, and sunglasses were invented then, or something like that.
Right. Or a famous one that gets brought up is sometimes you will be watching a period film, and the characters will have cigarettes that have filters in them before they were existed, whatever. And listen, look, if somebody pulls out a fucking like a Winston Cool Menthol Crush, in like an 1800s cowboy film,
just a vape pen,
right? Then of course that's really shitty and egregious, and you should call that out. I guess this signals to me that like this poster has very little idea of how movies get made.
Well, it's like, so my thing is like, you can complain about not having a hole in a shirt or it being worn down a little bit, But like, if you really want to double down on that, you can be like, okay, well, none of these films show any realistic hygiene at all.
Well, that's a good point. So I was just talking about how like these things can be either slightly off base or really off base.
Yeah, nobody fucking showered back then. Nobody had dental hygiene.
Well,
nobody,
no, but that's not okay. I'm going to push back on that. I don't think that everybody was a wildly ahistorical thing that happens a lot in period films that bugs the shit out of me is that people are either disgusting, filthy peasant slobs, stupid, lowbrow, or they're like
prestige,
upper crust, aristocratic, high society. And there's no in between, you know. And so part of the issue that I take with this person is like they're just saying, and you know, maybe I'm reading too much into it. Maybe they literally want like a slightly the shirts to be like more slightly tattered.
Yeah.
And I've seen bad examples of filmmaking where yes, everybody looks like they just got out of the wardrobe department, and sure, that's not great. But I don't think that that's the norm. Usually it's like either everyone is portrayed as like a horrible drunken slob that can barely stand up and like works in a stable somewhere, or it's like this pure and clean prince and princess situation, or like, you know, upper crust thing. And it's like, so that's a bigger, to me, and maybe that's what you're alluding to, is like the bigger issues that we don't really see like working class people. Rendered very realistically in like the period.
Yeah,
stuff.
I think it's silly to be focusing on like tattered clothes when there's a lot more egregious things that period pieces do that I think we are generally okay with and are not a big deal. But if you're going to make a big deal out of a hole in a shirt, why are you making a big deal out of the bigger thing?
I guess I just get fed up with more by anachronisms in history films, but not to a microscopic degree there either. So, for example, like First Night comes up a lot when you think of anachronisms. Like, oh, they're singing "We Will Rock You" and stuff, but that's very deliberate.
Yeah,
it's
they know what they're doing with the film.
No. So, but that's what I'm saying. I'm trying to distinguish from that versus like actual shitty anachronisms. Like when a movie is deadly serious, portraying itself as like a deadly serious period piece, period drama, but then you have like guys like dapping it up to each other and stuff, or like, okay, here's one that bothers the shit out of me. Any period film that features super precocious children, like kids that are just like free to like do whatever they want and speak however they want. And it's like, listen, I don't know how much history our audience has read, and certainly societies ebb and flow through their progressive tendencies, but kids weren't just allowed to be like, oh no, you didn't, like back in the fucking Middle Ages. Like you weren't allowed to be like a precocious, free-spirited, like speak your mind child. Either you'd be proclaimed a witch, or somebody would like just beat the shit out of you. Like, I mean, that's the reality. So like that's more annoying to me. Like was when you see some kid who's just like feels free to talk to their parents, like the same way like Braylon or Brayley would feel free to talk to their parents today. I don't know. Are there any other period things that stick in your craw? I have a whole bunch, but
I think that even ones that do pop up, it's just kind of you go with it. And I think period pieces are just really difficult to narrow down and to cover all your bases, and you're never going to do it. And
you can't make a perfect one.
No.
I guess my approach to this is like I see this post and I want to react to it with examples of better shit that you should be upset about. So I mentioned one, like bad anachronisms. Like
bad accents.
So like a bad anachronism, you know, I just mentioned like, and I seriously, like I watched like a thing recently where they were like literally dapping it up like they were like you would with your friend today. Another one is like jokes that are too modern, like like in a serious piece, like if people are doing Whedonisms, you know what I mean by Whedonism?
Yeah.
Like they have those now? They have those now. You know, that kind of shit. You know, but other stuff, there's also like historically inaccurate shit that's really egregious that you can pick on. Like, for example, like Apocalypto is like a movie that I really think is actually quite great. But the Spanish conquistadors show up about 300 years too early. Like, that's the place where you can get nitpicky and be like, oh yeah, they really fucked that up. You know, like it's a little bit different. I think like,
if the events that you are fabricating or putting out of proper lineage have to do directly with the plot, that's where it gets egregious. So you mentioned the album cover of the Beatles being in the wrong year. Whatever, that has nothing to do with the plot. That has nothing to do to push the narrative. But if there's things like that where it affects the outcome of the movie or some character, then there's a problem.
That's a good way of distinguishing it. You know, so Pearl Harbor, obviously, that's an egregious example. And that's one that has come up a few times. You know, in Pearl Harbor, they show the Japanese Zeros like literally crashing into civilian buildings. Whereas in real life, say what you will for the virtues of Hirohito's army, they went out of their way not to target civilians. They just did that for the movie to enhance the plot, to drub up whatever emotions you're going to have against those villains, per your point. You know, but there's just like all kinds of things that here's another anachronism that bothers me. Everybody in the Middle Ages seems to know how to read.
It's a good one.
Like it wouldn't be a thing.
No.
In fact, like the Dark Ages were the Dark Ages because nobody knew how to fucking read. It's only because like Bibles started becoming affordable that people learned how to fucking put words together and shit. But there's also, okay, let's even go with the wardrobe thing. There are ways you can be nitpicky about the wardrobe. If this person watched the thing and like their clothes were like OxyClean ass white, then they've got something there. But also, it's not as if they didn't have the ability to mend things back then. In fact, that's like the only thing they knew how to do is like, it's not as if needlework wasn't a thing they weren't skillful and adept at. In fact, there's a lot of like medieval and not just medieval, ancient clothing that's like in museums right now that looks better than shit so it's like,
does this person think that if somebody in the medieval times, a hole came to be in one of the shirts that they wouldn't sew it, that they wouldn't fix it? It's just, there's a hole there. I'm going to wear it.
And again, we don't know what they're watching, but like, let's say it's like, I don't know, let's say they're watching like something that took place in ancient Egypt. Do you expect like a regent Egyptian prince? Do you expect like their wardrobe to look the same as your jammies do when you like roll out of bed every day?
It's like, also like, there might be some confusion with this person. Like if you're watching something in the 70s or 60s, and even today, people wear a lot of retro shit, and a lot of hole-riddled clothes and a lot of worn-out clothes is popular and is kind of more common. And like I said, back then, if something got tattered or ripped, they're able to mend it, and they're not going to walk around with a fucking rip in their jeans. There wasn't even fucking jeans back then. Like, there's just a different perception.
Totally. I mean, and also, at this point, I'm just like taking this guy's prompt and using it as like because that was the Anonymous's question as well. Do we have any period film pet peeves? And I've got a whole bunch. I mean, here's one. When people, so here's another example I can think of something being really historically off base. It'll be like an action history thing or whatever, and there will always be some, because the film needs to interject a female protagonist, there will be some like aristocratic high society woman who knows how to fight just as well as the soldiers do. Because I don't know, she like shadowed her brothers who are like also knights or whatever it is. And it's like, and listen, this is not me being like, you know, fuck DEI or any of that shit. I'm not doing that. It's just like there weren't a bunch of girl bosses fighting in the Crusades. You know what I mean? No. It's not that I don't want that. Like, it's not that I wouldn't accept that. And maybe there's like a counterexample to that.
It just wasn't common, is what you're saying.
You know, but we can even go more modern. And again, I want diversity in my film, so I'm not going to get mad at these movies for doing this. But think of a movie like The Patriot, right? At the end, you've got the big fat slob colonist, and then you've got this noble, weather-beaten former slave, and they decide, at least we're not British, right? We're going to fight together. And it's like, give me a fucking break. Like, that's the stuff you should be skeeting about. Like, because you happen to like catch whatever random TNT period film, fucking King, what was the fuck?
King Arthur.
Guy Ritchie did like a King Arthur movie. Was it just called King Arthur? Guy Ritchie's?
No, that was Guy Ritchie. Yeah, it was called King Arthur.
Yeah, Guy Ritchie. Was it just Guy Ritchie's King Arthur?
Yeah.
It wasn't called Guy Ritchie's King.
Clive Owen.
I don't think he was in that.
Yes, he was.
Wait, hang on. I've got it here. It is King Arthur by Guy Ritchie. It's Charlie Hunnam, Jude Law.
Oh,
Eric
you know
Bana.
What? Didn't Clive Owen? Clive Owen was in one with Keira Knightley.
That wouldn't shock me either. I'm sure that he's done a fistful of.
Well, go on with your piece while I look this up.
Well, no, but all I'm saying is like, you know, so this guy rolled out of bed in his jammers, you know, wearing his high school football sweatshirt that, yes, is now old and tattered, rolled up on Guy Ritchie's Charlie Hunnam King Arthur film. And
Antoine Fuqua.
Oh
his
my
King
God,
Arthur.
Antoine Fuqua did one. Jesus fucking Christ.
Yep.
Holy shit. No wonder we memory hold that.
2004.
Jesus Louises. That's gotta be. Well, so actually, this is a good time for some table talk. We're having a hard time. We're realizing we may have a hard time if the reel happens to land on the bargain bin category.
We have to rethink this.
We might be shit out of luck because I think that Matt, Frank, and I have been rolling around the box stores insofar as they exist, and we're not seeing a lot of bargain bins left over.
No.
This might be a bygone era. I think, and actually now that like Rite Aids are shutting down and like Big Lots are gone, I mean, I'm sure there's like some thrift stores and stuff, but that's not quite the same spirit.
No. So we have to.
So we may have to retool, and luckily we haven't landed on that category yet.
But we'll think about it.
Yeah, we're gonna think about how to retool that because we still want some kind of version of the bargain bin. But I was just gonna say that would have been a fucking bargain bin find.
Who knows?
For sure.
It could be something that pops up.
Oh man, that's will be a rough watch. Anyway, I'm just saying it's like you roll across 2004's Antoine Fuqua, Clive Owen starring King Arthur while you're eating Cinnamon Toast Crunch and like wearing fucking Crocs. And you're like, why doesn't everybody look like a fucking slob?
I have one that's really egregious.
Yeah, go for it.
It's kind of along the lines of the First Night thing.
Sure.
But using a modern song in the soundtrack for a period piece.
That doesn't hurt. Well, but okay, so maybe that's a good place to leave off.
Yes.
Because there are films that are anachronistic on purpose. You mentioned First Night. That's like a film that is anachronistic on purpose.
Like Baz Luhrmann shit. And it could be more of a Baz Luhrmann thing, and this is just me hating Baz Luhrmann, but like Great Gatsby had a bunch of stuff.
Listen, I am also allergic to that, but it's not. I think
there's intention.
I think you've labeled it appropriately. It's more of a revulsion to Baz Luhrmann. I think he was overrated in the 90s, and now we're suffering from the propulsion that he had from that time period that has given him the staying power to infest our screens to this day. Sorry, Baz. I know that you're a regular avid listener. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, so we just touched on a lot of things that are like way more egregious. I mean, I think that just anachronisms in general can be annoying if they're not skillfully used, particularly if, this person's going on and on about wardrobe. They haven't even mentioned like hair. I mean, like I have seen some very fucking out of place hair. Like it's like people with undercuts and shit. The broccoli haircut for sure is like in period pieces now. Yeah. In fact, I wouldn't be surprised if like it didn't have something to do with popularizing it.
Or like facial hair too.
Facial hair stuff. I don't know if you've ever looked at like the artwork from from ancient times. People's hair be jacked up.
Yeah, they weren't doing they weren't like crafting chin straps and stuff with their fucking straight razor.
Although apparently the Edgar is a big deal now, so and that's pretty close to what they were rocking back then. But I mean, here's the thing that should fucking upset you more than, his clothes are a little too clean. Look at some motherfucker with Botox. Like, there's definitely like a bunch of asshole lips. You know what I mean? The fucking duck lips. That doesn't bother you, but somebody's like shirt is too manicured.
It's bad.
But anyway, I've actually long forgotten the post, and I'm now just going off on a tangent about things that are pet peeves I have that are actually legitimate with period films, and I don't know, to me, being off the mark ever so slightly, like one that is coming up a lot, looking at these, like, and the internet is littered with these BuzzFeed, like the 20 most historically inaccurate. One that's coming up over and over again is like, they're like, well, and Titanic seems to be coming up a lot in this episode, but like in Titanic, Leo talks about how all he wants to do is just go fishing on this lake with his loved ones, and that lake was a man-made lake, and it didn't even exist.
Guess what? He wasn't a real person.
No. The ghost of Leonardo DiCaprio and Kate Winslet aren't undersea in like a magical undersea fuck milieu in the spirit world or whatever that also happens in that movie. I'm just saying, that's not the Irish jig they would be doing. They'd be doing a more northern jig. That's more of a southern from the Cork region. They want more of a Belfast jig.
He's not the king of the world when he said that.
He wasn't the king of the world when he was saying that. He said he painted her like one of his French girls.
He never dated anyone that was French.
Those girls were Dutch. I could tell by the tuft of pube that, as in the film, I have an extensive collection of Dutch porns. And those are not French girls. Anyway, this has been a very rambly segment, but that's what the reel is good for. We're not really trying to put an essay together for you.
No. Right? I think there's just more irate thing. There's more things to be irate than a hole in a shirt.
That's the takeaway. We do have period film pet peeves, and they aren't. It's not the little shit. It's not. That's not the brand of gum they would be chewing in 1965. Unless it's like an Arctic Blast or whatever. Or if they're eating bubble tape in 1938, then I'm gonna be like, that's pretty off base.
Big League Chew during the Great Depression. If
they're drinking like a Starbucks in like 1961, I'm gonna be like, okay, I guess somebody really fucked that up. But even then, it's like people that are script supervisors are all in their 20s now. They probably all think that Starbucks is from the 1850s or whatever. I don't fucking know. Anyway, if it doesn't massively fuck the movie over otherwise in its historical accuracy or the things it's trying to do,
just chill out.
Maybe let it off the hook unless it's like wearing its historical accuracy on sleeve.
Everyone should chill. Nobody can. Nobody!
And those are the lessons you should be gleaning from Cast Against Type. castagainsttype@gmail.com. You can leave a submission just like Anonymous did today.
Thanks, Anonymous. Follow us on the socials. Follow us on...
What socials are we even on?
I don't know. Instagram, TikTok.
We're not on TikTok anymore.
I don't know. We're on it.
Okay, follow us on
Instagram
most of the socials at Cast Against Type.
Listen on all the podcast places.
Apple Podcasts, Amazon Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio.
YouTube. Download us and put us on your iPod.
That's how I rock it.
I know, that's why I said it.
Don't be hating. Don't you be hating now.
Don't be hating.
Don't you be hating. Spread the word, spread the love. We're
back. The skeets.
We've been regular. We're doing it regular. Please reach out. And in the meantime,
iron your clothes.
Keep your Crocs in line. Wear your ragged ass shit into the future. I don't know.
I don't want to be around anymore.
Definitely don't. Okay, bye. 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 Bye.